The Reckoning of Aelira. The Reckoning of Aelira. Chapter 1. Awakening Shadows. Chapter 1. Awakening Shadows. Dawn crept over the jagged peaks of Stone Canyon, casting long shadows across the archive. The air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of machinery that seeped through the cracks of the ancient stone walls. Aelira Althara pressed herself against the cool surface. The rhythmic thumping of her heart overshadowed all else. An innocent child was in danger of becoming a pawn in a dangerous experiment, and time was slipping away like grains of sand. She couldn't let the debt owed to the scientists scar their community permanently, not on her watch. Her dark hair framed her determined face, and her emerald eyes burned with resolve as she prepared to act. With each step toward the chamber, her breath quickened. 5 minutes until initiation, a scientist's voice announced, cool and indifferent. Anxiety knotted in her stomach as she glimpsed the child strapped into the apparatus, wide-eyed and trembling. The air thickened with fear, and Aelira's resolve began to harden. The enormity of her mission loomed over her, and she fought to steady her breath, knowing failure would bring unimaginable consequences to the child and her community. 4 minutes left, the voice boomed again, igniting a fire within Aelira. She clenched her fists, knowing that lingering would only bring them closer to disaster. What if they caught her? The scientists remained oblivious, their eyes glued to screens. She needed to disrupt their cruel plans, but the stakes were higher than ever. The tension coiled tighter within her, a serpent ready to strike. The countdown continued, relentless. 3 minutes. The urgency in the scientist's voice jolted her into action. Aelira swallowed hard, shaking off her doubt. She had to move. No time for second-guessing. Steeling herself, she stepped forward, only to hear a floorboard creak beneath her weight. All heads turned, eyes locking onto her with shock that quickly morphed into suspicion. "Stop her!" one scientist shouted, scrambling for the emergency switch. A heavy weight settled in Aelira's stomach as the ground shifted beneath her, the countdown echoing in her ears like a relentless drum. She had to save the child, but now she was the one in danger. The answer lay just beyond the door, but with every passing second, the chance to thwart their experiment slipped further from her grasp. With no choice but to plunge into chaos, Aelira braced herself to face whatever awaited her. Dusk settled over Reconciliation Plaza like a shroud, casting long shadows that danced ominously as Aelira Althara raced through the thrumming crowd. Tension filled the air, thick with the pungent smoke from the experiment site, where authorities were on the brink of unleashing chaos. With only hours remaining, she had to intervene. A child was trapped amidst the turmoil, their wide eyes reflecting the fear that tightened in her chest. She had to save them. Failure would bring consequences beyond measure, a looming injustice heavy as a storm cloud. 3 days left. No more time to waste. The experiment loomed ahead, a grotesque spectacle of machinery and flickering lights, overseen by men in dark uniforms with eyes as cold as steel. Aelira's pulse quickened as she spotted the child, no older than 6, wedged between the twisted metal, oblivious to the danger surrounding them. She gulped, every instinct urging her to charge in, but the risk of exposure weighed heavily. What if she was caught? The authorities would not hesitate to silence her, yet the child's terrified face strengthened her resolve. She couldn't let them suffer for her hesitation. With a deep breath, she plunged into the chaos, each step a battle against the countdown echoing in her mind. Aelira dodged between throngs of onlookers, their faces painted with a mix of curiosity and dread. Her lungs burned, the thick smoke stinging her eyes, forcing her to blink back tears. The commotion intensified, shouts erupted as the experiment spiraled out of control, wires snapping and sparks flying. Alarms blared, drowning out her thoughts, reminding her that time was not her ally. She was running out of options, and every second spent hesitating felt like a betrayal. The authorities were closing in, their eyes scanning the crowd. If they spotted her, she would be taken down before reaching the child. Just a few feet away now, Aelira's decision pressed down on her like a vice. The child began to cry, the sound piercing through the chaos like a shard of glass. "Do not be afraid, little one. I will come to your aid," she shouted, though her voice was barely audible over the cacophony. Just then, a flash of movement caught her eye. An officer, face taut with suspicion, was zeroing in on her position. Panic coursed through her, quickening her breath. Could she really risk everything?
If she failed to save the child, the community would suffer consequences beyond measure. But if she moved now, she might be caught, and then who would save anyone? The clock was ticking, and every second counted. The decision was made. Adrenaline surged as she sprinted forward, arms outstretched toward the child, just as the ground erupted beneath her feet. The experiment had gone awry.
The midday sun blazed over Reconciliation Plaza, casting sharp angles of light across the chaotic scene below. Aelira Althara stood at the edge of the thrumming crowd, distant shouts blending with the acrid scent of burnt metal that quickened her pulse. The familiar aroma of spiced food wafted through the plaza, a stark contrast to the turmoil that now twisted her memories into shadows. She pressed a hand to her chest, the weight of her past failures tightening around her. Just then, a child's cry cut through the noise, a desperate plea that shattered her careful detachment. Beneath a crumbling structure, a small figure struggled, echoing the failures of her own childhood. Time slipped through her fingers like sand. She had to act before it was too late. Aelira's heart thundered in her chest as she spotted the child, a mere silhouette against the chaos, trapped beneath the rubble while onlookers stood frozen, their gazes a mix of horror and helplessness. The crushing weight of her past failures bore down on her, threatening to paralyze her. The scent of jasmine mingled with smoke, igniting memories of home, of days spent in her mother's warm embrace, where compassion was cherished and not a burden. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, "Aelira, you must never turn away from those in need." With newfound resolve, Aelira surged forward, her feet pounding against the cool stone. Each step became an act of defiance against her fears, the murmur of doubt fading into the background. "This moment is a crossroads, a choice between my past and the hope for redemption," she whispered to herself, urgency tinging her voice. The child's cries resonated within her, a beacon amid the chaos, driving her onward. "Cling tightly, brave one. I'm coming for you, just a moment longer." The words slipped from her lips as she knelt beside the crumbling structure, her hands trembling as they brushed against the debris. She hesitated, glancing back at the crowd, their wide eyes reflecting expectation and dread. Would they see her as a fool, recklessly risking everything for a child who might already be lost? Deep within, the familiar humming of anxiety urged her to act. She could not falter now. Gripping a jagged piece of stone, Aelira heaved it aside, the sound of crumbling rock echoing in her ears. The child was so close, yet the danger loomed larger than life. "I can't bear the thought of failure once more. The stakes are too high," she murmured, catching a glimpse of the child's trembling hands reaching for her. Each movement became a desperate dance, her fingers scraping against the rough surface, her resolve hardening with each second. With one final heave, the stone shifted, and the child emerged, trust shining. Dawn crept into Reconciliation Plaza, spilling soft gold across the weathered stone and illuminating the intricate carvings of the towering obelisk that stood sentinel at its center. The air was cool and crisp, a gentle breeze rustling the colorful banners that fluttered above like whispers of bygone unity. Aelira clutched the small child to her side, the warmth of the tiny body against her hip, stark against the chill seeping through her thin cloak. Voices rose and fell in a chaotic symphony, echoing off the canyon walls and amplifying her unease. The scent of spiced food wafted from nearby vendors, mingling with the sharp tang of fear that hung thick, creating a heady mix that made her stomach churn. Aelira's breath quickened as she spotted the authorities weaving through the throng, their uniforms stark against the vibrant colors of the plaza. She froze, each step forward an echo of the child's fragile safety. The crowd surged around her, bodies brushing against her cloak, the texture of rough wool pricking her skin. She swallowed hard, the taste of dread was bitter on her tongue as a scientist's voice cut through the murmurs, demanding everyone remain still. Panic clawed at her throat as she scanned for an escape. The obelisk, a symbol of unity, now felt like a cage trapping her in indecision. The sun crested further, casting long shadows that danced across the plaza, the light a beacon of false hope amidst the turmoil. Aelira turned, gripping the child's small hand tightly, their fingers entwined like a lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. Around them, the crowd swelled, voices rising in a mix of excitement and fear. The rich aroma of cumin and coriander from the food stalls wafted closer, but Aelira couldn't focus on anything but her quick, deliberate movements, searching for a path through the maze of bodies that surrounded her, each face a potential threat or a silent witness to her defiance.
Just as she took a step forward, a voice boomed nearby, echoing ominously off the canyon walls, "Stay where you are." Aelira hesitated, her knuckles whitening as she clutched the child's hand, her shoulders tensing as she considered the weight of her duty. The crowd shifted restlessly, a tide of anxiety, yet she steadied her breath, focusing on the narrow alleyway she spotted between two ornate buildings, their tiled roofs shimmering in the sunlight like fractured prisms. With a final glance at the obelisk, she pulled the child closer and began to weave through the crowd, a desperate prayer on her lips for their safety. As Aelira slipped into the alley, the cacophony of the plaza faded, replaced by the echo of her rapid breaths and the soft gasp of the child beside her. The cool stone walls closed in, offering a momentary cocoon of safety, yet the tension of the plaza trailed behind her. Pressing against the rough surface, she felt the grit beneath her fingertips, grounding herself in the reality.
Aelira crouched in the shadows of Reconciliation Plaza, where the last embers of daylight flickered against the worn cobblestones. The plaza, adorned with colorful banners that swayed in the breeze and a towering obelisk at its center, felt alive, yet fraught with tension. Distant shouts echoed through the air, a cacophony of authority searching for her, a reminder of the tightness in her chest, a physical manifestation of her fears. Clenching her jaw, she steadied her breath, striving to maintain her focus. This moment felt like a fragile cocoon, yet danger loomed like a storm cloud, threatening to unravel everything she fought for. She had to protect the child beside her, small and fragile, and she had to protect herself. But at what cost? Aelira's fingers brushed the child's hair in a hesitant gesture meant to soothe. "It's okay. You're safe here," she murmured, her voice wavering with uncertainty. The child's wide eyes searched hers, pleading for reassurance. They were trapped, and Aelira grappled with the truth that she had led them into this perilous maze. Doubt flickered through her. Memories of her last failed attempt to save someone clawed at her. Hadn't she caused more harm than good then? That memory gnawed at the edges of her resolve. She squeezed her eyes shut, banishing it. Not now. Not again. The shouts drew closer, reverberating through the plaza like thunder. Aelira's pulse quickened, counting down the moments. She glanced at the child, whose lip quivered but whose gaze remained steady, igniting a spark of courage in Aelira. Straightening, she felt the weight of her past press down on her, dragging her spirit. She had stumbled and fallen before too many times to count, but this child deserved more than her failures. She had to find a way out, had to prove she could be more than a specter of her past. "Stay quiet," she whispered, urgency thickening her tone as she listened for the footsteps drawing near. The scent of spices lingered in the air, a ghost of the market they had just fled, starkly contrasting the chill of danger closing in. Aelira's mind raced, piecing together a plan while grappling with the shadows flickering at the edges of her vision. She scanned their hiding spot, searching for an escape route. A narrow alley loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, promising either salvation or ruin. But could she trust herself to lead them there? Would she only endanger the child further? Her breath hitched, a knot tightening in her throat. With one last glance at the child, Aelira made her decision. She stood, determined. Chapter 2. Awakening in the Archive. Aelira Althara stood on the makeshift podium in Reconciliation Plaza, the weight of the community's future pressed down on her like a heavy anchor. As dusk settled, the sun dipped low, casting elongated shadows that danced among the anxious murmurs of the crowd. Tension filled the air, a blend of hopeful anticipation and simmering unrest. Together we must thread our destinies against the dark cloud of this experiment that threatens our beloved home. She shouted, her voice trembling yet resolute. Time was running out, only days remained before the week closed, and the consequences of inaction loomed ominously. Each fleeting moment bore down on her, a stark reminder that without justice their lives could spiral into chaos, their deaths unforgiving, and their futures bleak. Aelira scanned the faces in the crowd, searching for resolve, but finding skepticism instead. A group near the front whispered amongst themselves, their expressions tight with fear. "What's the alternative, Aelira?" One shouted, his voice jagged against the twilight. "Change is scary. The experiment could bring prosperity."
Her pulse quickened, the seconds slipped away, each one a fleeting moment. What kind of fruit can grow from the twisted vines of deceit? Such a blossom would wilt before it could even greet the sun. She countered, her throat constricted, words nearly choking her as she fought to convey the urgency of her message. She needed them to see the truth before it was too late, but doubt hung thick in the air, suffocating her words. The crowd shifted, some leaning in, others crossing their arms defiantly. The pressure mounted as the clock ticked down to their impending doom. If we do not unite in this moment, the experiment shall engulf us, devouring our very essence. The murmurs intensified, a blend of fear and hope, but still she sensed the fissures widening. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the archive, slicing through her impassioned plea like a knife through flesh. Heads turned, and the air crackled with tension. Aelira's breath quickened. Could it be an accident, or something far more sinister lurking in the shadows? The crash reverberated through the plaza, pulling focus away from her. Aelira's mind raced. "We don't have time for this," she shouted, desperation fueling her voice. "If we let this divide us, we'll lose everything." But as her words hung in the air, she could see the divide deepening. Some rushed towards the archive, curiosity igniting their feet, while others remained, their fear.
Aelira burst through the heavy oak doors of the archive of Stone Canyon, panting. Inside, the atmosphere crackled with tension, carrying the faint scent of aged parchment. Shadows lingered in the corners, whispering secrets of the past, but today the air was thick with unease. The community had gathered, an uneasy mass of faces, marked by suspicion and fear. Accusations pulsed like a heartbeat among them, growing louder with each passing moment. "I ask you to listen to my words," she called out, desperation threading through her voice. The relentless ticking of the clock echoed in her ears, amplifying the urgency. Was it too late to uncover the truth behind the crash? Aelira scanned the crowd, her eyes darting among clenched fists and hostile expressions. Someone shouted her name, an accusation hurled like a stone. "Traitor!" It cut through the air, sharp and piercing. She steadied her breath, refusing to back down. "I want the truth," she declared, attempting to close the widening chasm between them. Yet their gazes narrowed, suspicion brewing like a storm. Overcoming their distrust was essential, her mission depended on it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, tension thickening the air. Aelira stepped forward, hands raised, palms outstretched in a gesture of peace. "I'm here to help," her voice trembled, betraying her turmoil. Bodies shifted, blocking her path. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, each second heavy with their judgment. The investigation mattered more than her fears. She needed to draw them back from the brink of chaos. A child's cry pierced the air, a reminder of innocence caught in turmoil. "Look around. This struggle isn't just mine. It affects us all," she urged, her voice rising above the clamor. But her words fell flat, swallowed by hostility. The archive, meant to be a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, and she was the captive, torn between her mission and the growing storm of anger. In that moment, Aelira's resolve hardened. She remembered the weight of history, the stories contained within these walls. This archive stood as a testament to truth and community. "If we don't stand together, we could lose it all," she shouted, urgency lacing every syllable. But they surged forward, a tide of accusations crashing against her. She stepped back, heart racing. What if they chose to abandon hope now? As the crowd pressed closer, Aelira stood at the edge of despair, struggling to catch her breath. The archive loomed behind her, a witness to the unfolding chaos. She searched their eyes. Morning light filtered through the narrow slits of the archive of Stone Canyon, illuminating dust motes that danced like spirits caught between realms. Aelira Althara crouched at a weathered table, her fingers tracing the coarse texture of an ornate grain bread. The scent of sun-dried fish from the vendor outside mingled with the earthy aroma of canyon root vegetables simmering in the communal stew pot nearby. Shadows of stonemasons and herbalists flitted past the entrance, their hands busy with the day's tasks. The distant sound of laughter echoed from a rooftop gathering where the wealthy shared meals in lavish celebration, oblivious to the strained expressions and whispered arguments of those nearby. Aelira's pulse quickened as thoughts of the hidden document flooded her mind.
If the experiment manipulated their resources, what would become of the community she loved? Aelira tore a piece of the bread, its crust crumbling between her fingers, and dipped it into the rich herb cactus stew. The warmth enveloped her, briefly easing her tense shoulders. Outside, a group of market traders haggled over the price of wild berries, their voices rising and falling like the canyon winds. She paused, listening intently. A soft cough interrupted her thoughts. Elder Mirrors stood before her, his silver hair gleaming like polished stone. He offered a slight bow, maintaining eye contact, an unspoken acknowledgement of their shared burden. "Aelira," he said, his voice low, the whispers grow louder about the experiment. "We must tread carefully, for the spirits of the vanished may not take kindly to our meddling." The mention of the vanished people made her shiver, and she gripped the document tighter, feeling its heaviness. As she read the damning lines once more, dread twisted in her stomach. The archive, filled with conflicting opinions and disinformation, felt like a labyrinth designed to ensnare those who sought the truth. Aelira glanced at the door, half expecting to see the shadows of the canyon lengthening, merging with the uncertainty of her findings. Would she be able to unite the community against such a powerful threat? Taking a deep breath, she whispered a quick prayer to Aelira, the guardian of balance, asking for clarity and strength for the battle ahead. With the document clutched tightly in her hand, Aelira stepped outside into the morning light, where the air was thick with the scent of possibility and fear. She could hear the distant laughter from the rooftops, a stark contrast to her quickened pace and trembling hands. As she made her way down the narrow path, she resolved to gather the community, to share the truth and confront the experiment before the shadows consumed them all. The call to action resonated within her, urging her forward with determination.
The archive of Stone Canyon breathed the fresh morning air as sunlight poured through the glass, warming the ancient stone walls. Aelira paused, inhaling the earthy scent of aged texts, mingling with the fresh aroma of dew-kissed leaves from the rooftop gardens. Silence enveloped her, punctuated only by the soft rustling of paper and the distant whisper of wind against the cliffs. She brushed her fingertips along the intricate carvings of the grand double doors, feeling the cool stone beneath her touch, a tactile reminder of history's weight. An urgency thrummed in her chest, compelling her to act as she sensed the growing unrest beyond the walls. Aelira moved swiftly through the central atrium, where the large skylight opened the space to the vastness of the morning sky. Shadows of leaves danced across the floor, flickering as a gentle breeze stirred the air. The sound of her footsteps echoed against the stone, creating a rhythm that matched her quickening pace. Outside, voices grew louder, laughter interspersed with rising tension, an unsettling undercurrent that twisted her gut. With a glance toward the entrance, she sensed the community's hopes resting on her, pushing her forward amidst the growing unease. As she reached the rows of archives filled with ancient texts, the rich scent of aged paper washed over her, a comfort amid the chaos. Her fingers skimmed the spines, the rough texture grounding her in the present, even as her thoughts raced ahead. The crowd beyond the doors murmured, their voices escalating into shouts, a storm brewing just outside the sanctuary of stone. Panic mixed with determination, and she turned away from the comforting rows of history, instincts guiding her toward the rooftop terraces. Aelira's pace quickened as she climbed the narrow staircase, her thoughts racing with urgency. Bursting onto the first rooftop terrace, the sun spilled over her as she adjusted to the brightness. The gardens here were vibrant, a riot of colors, red blooms and green foliage, yet the beauty felt stark against the chaos below. She could see the crowd now, faces twisted in anger, fists clenched, their shouts reaching her like arrows. Tension hung in the air. She needed to communicate the truth to them before it was too late. The archive felt like a fortress, yet Aelira's urgency grew. Distant shouts from the crowd seeped through the walls, echoing her fears. She gripped the terrace railing, grounding herself in a moment that felt both fleeting and eternal. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the canyon, a stark reminder of the time slipping away. What if she was stuck here, unable to reach them in time? The burden of her mission pressed down on her, reminding her that truth could be lost in the noise of anger. The air outside crackled with tension, a storm brewing among the gathered crowd. Aelira stepped away from the railing, her palms cool against the stone, grounding her before the chaos. Voices rose, sharp with accusation, echoing against the weathered walls of the archive of Stone Canyon. Each shout twisted in her stomach, an urgent reminder of the truth she had to reveal.
She inhaled deeply, the scent of sun-warmed stone mingling with the tang of fear, and moved toward the throng, her pulse racing. Shadows danced around her, flickering like the last vestiges of hope. Time slipped away, a reminder that silence could seal their fates. "Listen to me!" Aelira's voice strained against the roar of the crowd, faces twisted in anger, eyes burning with distrust. They surged forward, a wall of bodies pulsing with rage. She raised her hands, palms out, a plea for calm. "You don't understand. This isn't what it seems." But her words were swallowed by the tide of shouts, accusations flying like arrows, each one striking her resolve. With every second, the distance between her and the truth widened, the crowd's fear morphing into something darker, more primal. Aelira's pulse raced as adrenaline ignited her limbs. She fought to maintain her footing as the crowd pressed closer, a tide threatening to engulf her. The archive loomed behind her, a sanctuary now turned prison. "You're lying," a voice roared, echoing her worst fears. Familiar faces morphed into strangers, friends now turned foes. If they couldn't see the truth, all would be lost. "You're being manipulated," she shouted, her voice cracking with urgency. A heavy shove from the crowd knocked Aelira backward, the archive's stone walls pressing against her like a vice. Panic flared in her chest as shouts morphed into a cacophony of fear and hatred. The air thickened, every breath a struggle. She caught a glimpse of her friend, Davin, disbelief etched on his face. "Aelira," he shouted, reaching out, but the swell of bodies pushed him back. She was losing him, losing them all. She had to stand firm, to rally them. "This is our home, our future," she cried, straining to be heard above the chaos. The crowd collided like waves crashing against rocks, Aelira stumbling as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The world blurred, a whirl of shouting faces, anger boiling over. She pushed forward, desperation fueling her movements, but the crowd pushed back, relentless, hands grabbed at her, fingers clawing, and she gasped as her back hit the archive's wall. The truth felt like a fleeting shadow, slipping.
Chapter 3. Echoes of Resolve. Trapped, the weight of their anger pressed against Aelira's chest. The crowd surged around her, a chaotic entity that threatened to engulf her. For a heartbeat, terror gripped her, fearing it would swallow her whole. If she could not touch their hearts, if she could not weave the truth into their minds, they would remain bound by their own chains. Locking eyes with Davin, Aelira searched for a glimmer of understanding, a lifeline in the storm. As he disappeared into the throng, Reconciliation Plaza loomed ahead, bright banners fluttering in the morning breeze. Yet the atmosphere buzzed with unease. The leaders were gathering, and with them the fate of her island. Aelira needed to expose the collusion with the corporation. She took a breath, steeling herself. This was her moment, or it could be her end. Aelira crept toward the plaza, the cobblestones cool beneath her palms. Voices rose and fell, a chaotic symphony of hope and unrest. She slipped between bodies, her pulse quickening with each step. The leaders stood at the plaza's center, encircled by armed guards, their silhouettes sharp against the sunlight. Discussion flowed, their faces taut with urgency, while corporate executives loomed like vultures, ready to feast on the remnants of her community's spirit. Aelira's stomach twisted. Merely listening was not an option. She required the light of truth to pierce the shadows. The tension coiled around her like a serpent, bright and unforgiving. As she edged closer, the mingling scents of sweat and anticipation blending with the ghost of fresh bread wafting from a nearby stall. The words unfurled like dark petals. "We shall secure the funding, yet the community's acquiescence is essential," a leader pronounced, voice unyielding, hiding the poison beneath. Aelira's heart sank. Compliance. They were selling out their own people for profit. She crouched low, heart thrumming, ready to capture every damning word. But as she inched closer, a guard's shadow fell over her, and she froze. The air thickened, a tension that felt palpable, her instincts screaming to flee. "Hey, you there!" the guard barked, scanning the crowd. Aelira's breath caught as she ducked behind a pillar, her body pressed against the cool stone. Voices continued, oblivious to her peril. A shiver danced down her spine as she absorbed the malicious plan. "Evict the dissenters." Each word landed with the force of a hammer, solidifying her resolve. She couldn't be careless. Not now, not when everything was at stake.
The guard moved past, and she exhaled, but the taste of failure lingered in her mouth. She needed a new plan, more strategic, less reckless.
The archive of Stone Canyon loomed ahead, its ancient stone walls glowing in the fading light of dusk. Shadows stretched across the ground as Aelira Althara crouched low behind a cluster of thorny shrubs. Murmurs drifted through an open window, hinting at a gathering of the island's leaders and the sharp accents of corporate representatives. 3 days remained before the week closed, 3 days until the island's fate would be sealed. Aelira clutched her notebook, pulse quickening. She had to overhear their plans, gathering evidence of collusion that threatened everything she loved. The clock was ticking and failure was not an option. Aelira edged closer, breath hitching with each step. The voices grew clearer, tension thickening the air. "We can extract the minerals without anyone realizing it," a smooth voice proposed, dripping with arrogance. She paused, hand trembling over the page, pen poised to capture their betrayal. Sweat beaded on her brow as she fought the urge to flee. If they caught her here, she risked not only her chance to reveal their plans, but also her life. The stakes felt monumental, each second ticking away like a countdown to disaster. Suddenly, a loud laugh broke through the seriousness of the conversation, a reminder of their cavalier attitude toward the impending doom. "The islanders are too naive to understand the true value of their land. They'll thank us for the development once it's done," another leader chimed in, twisting Aelira's stomach. Each word dripped with the poison of greed, and she fought the urge to scream, outnumbered and ensnared in deceit. Aelira's shoulders tensed under the burden of her mission. The sound of footsteps nearby sent adrenaline coursing through her veins. They had to be cautious. The room pulsed with danger. "You're sure we can keep this under wraps?" a representative questioned, voice low and steely. Aelira bit her lip. She had to get the evidence, but there was no good way to ensure her safety. If discovered, the island would fall victim to their merciless plans, and her own future would be forfeit. She scribbled furiously, fingers numb as panic gripped her. The door creaked open, and Aelira barely had time to duck behind the thick foliage before a pair of boots clomped past her hiding spot. Her heart thudded, each beat a reminder that time dwindled. She needed to expose them before the week ended, before they claimed the land and the debt became a permanent scar on her soul. Peering out, she watched the leaders continue their conspiratorial chatter, blissfully unaware of the danger lurking mere feet away. Gathering her courage, she leaned in closer, ready to press her luck, knowing that one misstep could cost her everything. As dusk faded into night, Aelira's resolve hardened. She would not allow their greed to dictate the fate of her home. With a deep breath, she focused on the words spilling from their lips, every syllable a potential weapon in her fight. This was a battle she could not afford to lose. Morning light seeped through the narrow windows of the archive of Stone Canyon, casting jagged shadows across the dusty floor. Aelira Althara scanned the cluttered shelves, urgency swirling in her mind. If she failed to uncover evidence of the leaders' plans to exploit the island's precious resources, her community would face irrevocable consequences. The days were slipping away, and with them, her opportunity. By sunset on Friday, they would have claimed the land, etching a permanent scar on her. The stale air, thick with dust and desperation, pressed down on her. No time to waste. She had to move quickly, to find proof before it vanished like the tides under the moon's influence. Aelira rifled through the crumbling documents, each page a testament to the leader's greed. Time trickled away like sand, quickening her pulse. Shadows seemed to close in, and the echo of footsteps down the corridor sent panic clawing at her throat. Come on, she muttered, hands shaking as she fumbled with a stack of papers. Each rustle felt like a thunderclap in the silence, a prayer that none of the guards would hear her. 3 days remained until the execution of their plans, 3 days until they cemented their stranglehold on the island. Each pound of her heart echoed the stakes. Failure could cost her soul and threaten her community's future. The door creaked open, and Aelira froze, choking back a gasp. A guard stepped inside, his narrowed eyes scanning the room. Panic surged as she dove behind a heavy oak table. No. The document, her prize, lay on the floor, just out of reach, a confession of their treachery, waiting to be seized. Peeking from her hiding spot, she sensed the guard moving closer, his footsteps heavy and menacing. If he found her, it was over. They had to be searching for intruders. She couldn't let them catch her. Every second stretched into an eternity, the sound of her own breath deafening in the stillness. The guard moved closer to her hiding spot, and she held her breath, fear coating her tongue. Her body trembled with indecision.
Should she risk it and grab the document, or stay hidden and hope he would leave? The clock was relentless. Aelira squeezed her eyes shut, the sun's warmth spilling through the window, while cold dread pooled in her stomach. She needed to act, but every option loomed like a trap. If she waited too long, the evidence would remain lost, and the leaders would tighten their grip on the island. Revealing herself could mean imprisonment, or worse. The stakes couldn't be higher. Just as the guard turned his back, Aelira's resolve hardened. She lunged for the document, fingers grazing the edge, but it slipped from her grasp, skidding across the floor. The guard whipped around.
The archive of Stone Canyon loomed solemnly, its cool stone walls reverberating with whispered histories of those who had sought refuge within. Aelira crouched behind a weathered shelf, the earthy scent of ancient stone mingling with the sweet fragrance of the rooftop gardens. This aroma stirred memories of her distant home, a planet where unspoken emotions hung thick in the air. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across her skin, illuminating the faint luminescent essence that marked her presence. Heart racing, Aelira inhaled deeply, grounding herself against the urgency that pressed against her like an invisible weight. She could hear the guards growing closer, their voices a harsh reminder of the stakes at hand. Aelira's fingers brushed against the cool edge of the shelf as she scanned for the document, her pulse a relentless drum in her ears. Just as she glimpsed the corner of the parchment, a guard's voice sliced through the silence, sharp and accusatory. "Where is she?" The words echoed, and she froze, dread coiling in her stomach. No, not again, not this time, not for the island, not for those she had come to cherish. With a swift motion, Aelira snatched the document, its texture rough against her fingertips. The truth, her lifeline. She tucked it under her arm, but the rustling of parchment startled her, a sound too piercing amidst the tension. Inhaling the earthy scent once more, she fought against rising panic, a faint hum escaping her lips as she sought solace in its rhythm. Focus. The guards were closing in, every second was a heartbeat lost for her community. Darting from her hiding spot, Aelira's mind raced. The exit was blocked by a heavy wooden door, its surface unyielding. Locked. Her heart sank, but despair was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Focus, Aelira, focus, your mind is a compass through the storm," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. She knelt, fingers tracing the intricate carvings on the door, seeking any sign of weakness. Memories of her childhood flooded her mind, how she used to manipulate the locks of her father's study, the smell of cedar lingering as she crafted her way inside. Could she replicate that here? The guard's footsteps echoed ominously, a countdown she couldn't ignore. Aelira pressed her palm against the door, feeling the cool wood beneath her fingers. "You have traversed darker paths, Aelira. You stand for those who cannot speak," she reminded herself, drawing on the quiet determination that had brought her here. Searching for a tool in her pocket, her fingers brushed against small, meaningful objects she collected. The smooth stone, a reminder of her resolve. With the document pressing against her chest, Aelira lunged into the archive's dim corridor, shadows wrapping tightly around her. The scent of damp stone clung to her skin, echoing the archive's history which loomed like an ancient guardian. Outside, dusk cast a golden hue over the world, a stark contrast to the encroaching darkness behind her. The guard's footsteps echoed in the distance, a relentless drumbeat urging her forward. She pressed the crinkled paper closer, visions of the island's future spiraling in her mind. If she failed now, the collusion of the leaders would remain hidden, and hope would wither like the last leaves of autumn. She couldn't allow that outcome. Each breath came faster, a desperate plea for courage. She crept toward the exit, her heart matching the rhythm of the guard's footsteps, growing louder, closer. The door loomed ahead, its heavy surface a barrier between her and freedom. She reached for the lock, fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold metal. With a swift motion, she inserted the key, the mechanism clicking in protest. The door shifted, barely ajar, just enough to glimpse the fading light beyond. Her pulse raced, time was slipping away. The guards were almost upon her. This was not just escape, it was a fight for survival. The door swung open. Aelira barely had time to savor the rush of air before the guards stormed into the archive. She darted through the opening, adrenaline surging, but a sharp gasp slipped from her lips as the document fell from her grasp.
It fluttered to the floor, catching the last rays of sunlight. Her chest tightened with dread, torn between the instinct to flee and the compulsion to retrieve what could shatter the leader's schemes. Aelira coiled, ready to spring back. Would she risk capture for the sake of justice? Time fragmented. Aelira turned toward the guards, bravado sparking briefly in her chest. She could grab the document, but they would see her, they would know. The door still gaped behind her, an escape route, yet it felt like a trap. The air thickened with indecision, each second stretching into eternity. She could hear the guards' voices, sharp and demanding, converging on her. The island's fate pressed on her, an unbreakable burden. The decision crystallized. She wouldn't let fear dictate her actions. Aelira darted through the door, the cool evening air enveloping her as she fled into twilight. The world outside buzzed with life, uncaring, unaware of the battle within her. But the document haunted her thoughts. She had chosen survival over justice. The thought twisted like a blade, leaving a hollow ache in her chest.
Chapter 4. Awakening in the Light. Morning light filtered through the narrow gaps of the archive of Stone Canyon, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. The scent of sun-dried fish from the canyon lakes mingled with the earthy aroma of canyon root vegetables steaming in a small pot on the table. Aelira Althara stood at the entrance, clutching a shard of canyon stone in her palm, a talisman for protection. The atmosphere crackled with unspoken truths. Shadows of the past loomed just beyond her reach. Today, she would confront Elder Cale, the curator and gatekeeper of her origins, demanding the answers that had remained buried too long. Aelira stepped forward, the echo of her boots lost in the oppressive silence of the archive. She spotted Elder Cale, hunched over a table cluttered with ornate grain bread and honeycombs, sustenance for his morning reflections. As she approached, she dipped her head in respect, though determination surged within her. "Elder Cale, I urge you to reveal the hidden truths. My past calls to me," a whisper carried on the canyon's breath. Her voice trembled, but urgency fueled her. Cale looked up, a frown creasing his weathered face, the lines etched deep from years of guarding secrets. "Aelira, some truths dwell in shadows, meant to remain undisturbed. To unearth them could unravel the very fabric of our existence." Cale's gaze hardened, his posture shifting as he gestured dismissively. "Pointing out my faults, Aelira? That is a grave insult, especially in this sacred space. I will not discuss the past with you. Not here, not now." The words weighed heavily, steeped in tradition. Aelira swallowed hard, the urgency of her plea intensifying. "But don't you see, the island is changing? We're on the brink of something great, and only the records can guide us to a better future." Daring to step closer, she lowered her voice to a whisper, desperation creeping in. "May the flame protect us, Elder, but we cannot ignore the truth any longer." Cale's expression softened momentarily, a flicker of understanding, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You speak with the fervor of youth, but you're blind to the dangers. The balance we've fought for?" "The balance," she echoed, incredulous. "You mean the balance that keeps the truth hidden? The balance that shackles us to the past? I will not accept that." Her gaze swept over the shelves filled with artifacts, remnants of their ancestors. The shadows cast by the canyon walls whispered secrets just out of reach. The thought of leaving empty-handed twisted her gut, igniting a fierce determination within her. With resolve, Aelira stepped back, the untouched remnants of Aelira stood in Reconciliation Plaza, the morning sun casting long shadows across the cobblestones, illuminating the intricate carvings that told stories of unity and struggle. Tension hung in the air, a mix of hopeful anticipation and underlying unrest, as voices rose and fell among the gathering crowd. The towering obelisk at the center loomed over her, a silent sentinel to their past and the essence of their fight. The relentless ticking of the clock echoed in her mind, amplifying her urgency. "We cannot let the curator erase our stories. In those records lies the heartbeat of our fight. If we falter now, we risk losing who we are forever," she shouted, her voice slicing through the murmur of hesitant islanders. The archive held secrets they needed to uncover, truths that could protect their community from the looming threat of exploitation. As she scanned the crowd, she felt the weight of doubt and fear in the glances directed at her, constricting her breath. Time was slipping away,
and so was their chance to change their fate. Aelira's pulse quickened, sweat beaded at her temples as she faced the small gathering, their eyes darting nervously, some narrowing in skepticism. What doom awaits us in our indecision? Will the truth slip into the abyss, forever out of reach? She stepped closer, hands trembling, desperation igniting her words. We can't afford to be afraid. Fear must not be our companion, for they wish for us to forget, to surrender. Yet this moment is our awakening. The crowd shifted, whispers of danger swirling like a storm cloud, their collective anxiety palpable in the morning air. "But Aelira, what if the curator finds out?" A man's voice broke through, laced with panic. "What if we're punished for digging into the past?" His words hung heavy, each syllable a weight on Aelira's resolve. "We bear our burdens daily," she countered, her voice rising. "Every day we stay silent, we lose more of ourselves." The murmurs grew, uncertainty crackling like dry leaves underfoot, her determination battling against their fear. Aelira scanned the faces, searching for a glimmer of support amidst the shadows of doubt. "If we don't take action before the week ends, we'll be trapped in a cycle of oppression." But instead of rallying cries, she faced a tide of hesitant nods and downcast eyes. The clock ticked loudly, each second a reminder of their dwindling time. Defeat settled around Aelira as she stepped back, her words barely pierced the veil of fear, and she stood there, her shoulders slumping as despair washed over her. The crowd scattered, their murmurs dwindling until only silence remained. She had to confront the curator again, but how could she rally them when the truth seemed so distant?
Aelira strode through the heavy oak doors of the archive of Stone Canyon, determination thrumming in her veins. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like spirits among the shelves of ancient tomes. Each step echoed with history's weight, urging her forward into the heart of her mission. She had to confront the curator again, the truth constricted around her, suffocating and inescapable. Only days remained to unearth the secrets binding her ancestry to the scientific breakthrough that could save the island. Aelira wouldn't let fear silence her. This time she would demand answers. The curator, a figure draped in shadows, stood behind a massive desk cluttered with parchments. Aelira inhaled sharply, her fingers brushing against the cool wood as she leaned forward. "The truth is hiding just out of reach, don't you?" Her voice wavered slightly, but she steadied herself, refusing to back down. The curator's eyes flickered, a fleeting glimpse of reluctance. Aelira's pulse quickened as she pressed on. "This is about my family, about our future. You have to share what you know." He hesitated, glancing at the door as if the walls might betray him. "You don't understand the consequences of what you're asking. This breakthrough, it's not just science, it's a web of deceit, and your name weaves through it. Your lineage, Aelira, is more significant than you realize." A chill coursed through her. Aelira clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms. "What do you mean by that?" The curator's gaze hardened, a storm brewing within. "Those who harness this power have their own agenda. They view your heritage as a tool, a means to an end. If I reveal the truth, it could endanger you, even the island. You must tread carefully." Aelira inhaled sharply, the air sharp with tension. "I must move forward. The past is a key to our survival, and I won't shy away from it." Silence hung between them, thick and suffocating. Aelira squared her shoulders, determination surging through her like a flame. The curator's reluctance mirrored her own fears, but she would not yield. She stepped back, the weight of his words anchoring her resolve. The island, her people depended on her now. Aelira turned toward the door, urgency propelling her forward. The truth loomed ahead, complex and daunting. She would untangle it, no matter the cost. What legacy had been hidden from her, and at what price would she reclaim it? As she crossed the threshold, a renewed sense of purpose enveloped her. The archive, with its solemnity and hope, echoed her resolve. Aelira would not be a pawn in someone else's game. She would forge her own. Morning light spilled through the canyon, illuminating the worn stones of Reconciliation Plaza. Aelira stood at its center. Her heart thumped in rhythm with the vibrant pulse of the island. Around her, vendors hawked sun-dried fish and ornate grain bread, the aroma of herbed cactus stew mingling with the earthy scent of canyon root vegetables. Families gathered for their morning meals on nearby benches, sharing honeycombs and wild berries, their laughter rising like the morning mist. Yet the crowd before her was restless, faces marked by skepticism and unease.
The air crackled with tension, heavy and oppressive, as if a storm were brewing. Aelira squared her shoulders, determination mingling with uncertainty, as she prepared to ignite their spirits. Aelira raised her voice. The words cascaded from her lips, echoing the flowing waters of the canyon. "We cannot stand idle while our island is stripped of its beauty. Our ancestors watched over these lands, and if we do not unite, we risk losing everything." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fear. She caught a glimpse of a woman in the crowd, her hands gripping a sack of grain, eyes darting nervously as if expecting a reprimand for even being there. "We are the guardians of our future." She pressed on, her voice rising with fervor, but the crowd's murmurs swelled into a discordant chorus of dissent. A young man stepped forward, his face taut with anger. "And what do you propose, Aelira? We can't just challenge the curator. You speak of unity, but what of our livelihoods?" His words struck like a stone thrown into a still pond, rippling through the crowd. Aelira's heart sank, realizing the weight of her words had not inspired hope, but rather fear. The chattering grew heated, voices raised, and she could sense the chasm widening. She needed to shift the tide, but how? Aelira caught sight of an elderly woman, her back bent and hands trembling as she clutched a shard of canyon stone, a superstition to ward off bad spirits, yet the old woman seemed oblivious to the brewing storm. The crowd around her began to echo the sentiments of those who feared the repercussions of change. Had she only stoked the flames of division? Her mind raced, searching for a way to heal rather than fracture. "What if we come together, share our fears and dreams?" she called out, hoping to quell the rising tide of anger. But the crowd shifted uneasily, some pointing fingers, a gesture reserved for the most intimate of disputes. Aelira's stomach churned. She had crossed an unspoken line, and the ancestors seemed to loom over her, their presence a heavy reminder of tradition. She forced herself to meet the gazes of the elders, bowing slightly as a sign of respect. Would they see her as a leader?
Dusk draped the archive of Stone Canyon in a soft amber glow, the flickering candles casting shadows across the intricately carved stone walls. Aelira Althara stood before the curator, her pulse thrumming in sync with the aroma of herbed cactus stew wafting through the air from a vendor's stall just outside. Families gathered at tables, sharing ornate grain bread and sun-dried fish, their laughter echoing against the canyon's rocky embrace. Yet the warmth of the communal meal felt distant, eclipsed by the tension rising within the archive. Outside, the crowd murmured restlessly, sensing the urgency of discovery. Their hopes hung by a thread. She gripped the edge of the table, preparing to confront the curator about the breakthrough that tied her origins to the island's fate. Elder Tarian stood rigid, his fingers tracing the spines of ancient tomes as if they could shield him from Aelira's penetrating gaze. "You must understand, Aelira, some truths are best left untouched, especially those that pertain to the vanished people. We dare not disturb their spirits. It is blasphemous to speak their names during the whispering hour," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. Aelira's pulse quickened, the shadows lengthened, and the weight of tradition bore down on her like the canyon stones themselves. But if this discovery could shield us from exploitation, shouldn't we honor their memory by seeking understanding? Aelira's voice cut through the air, firm yet desperate. She stepped closer, her fingers grazing the edge of the table. The curator's expression hardened, and she caught the slight bow of his head, a sign of respect. Yet his refusal to meet her gaze betrayed his fear. As tension escalated, the murmurs outside grew louder, signaling unrest. A vendor stumbled, spilling a basket of herbed cactus stew onto the ground, the savory aroma mingling with the dust. The crowd's agitation seeped into the archive, a reminder of the stakes at hand. Aelira clenched her fists, the moment for pleasantries slipped away. The shadows of the canyon whispered secrets, urging her to act. "Elder, if you withhold this information, I will have no choice but to seek the truth elsewhere," she declared, her voice steady despite the turmoil brewing within her. Elder Tarian's features softened, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. "Aelira, the ancient forces at play here are beyond my control. This breakthrough is not just about knowledge, it intertwines with our very essence. To meddle is to risk awakening what should forever remain undisturbed." Aelira stepped back, catching sight of the crowd, their faces etched with anxiety and hope. It was time to rally them, to channel their unrest into... Chapter 5. Shadows of Resolution. Morning light spilled over Reconciliation Plaza, casting long shadows against the canyon walls. Aelira stepped onto the cobblestones, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The cool air was laced with the earthy scent of canyon root vegetables roasting on a nearby vendor's fire. Families gathered for breakfast, sharing herbed cactus stew and sun-dried fish, their laughter mingling with the crisp sounds of the early hour. The enforcers lurked near the plaza's edge, their presence a dark cloud over the vibrant morning. Aelira's stomach twisted. They had come to demand their tribute, and today she would confront them, no matter the cost. As Aelira approached, the enforcer's gaze weighed heavily upon her. A vendor offered her a piece of warm, slightly sweet grain bread, but she shook her head. The bread felt like a stone in her stomach. She had no appetite for comfort, only the resolve to stand against the looming threat. The enforcers, clad in dark uniforms that absorbed the sunlight, exchanged smirks as she drew nearer. Aelira raised her chin, trying to channel the courage the elders spoke of, but unease settled over the crowd, tension crackling like a distant storm. "You think you can challenge us?" One of the enforcers sneered, stepping forward with his hands resting on the pommel of his weapon. A few onlookers hesitated, their eyes darting between Aelira and the enforcer, the flicker of fear palpable. Whispers of the vanished people filled the air, invoking names and a superstitious prayer against retribution. "Stand with me," Aelira called out, but her words felt swallowed by the canyon's depths. The crowd's earlier fervor drained away, replaced by instinctual fear. The enforcer's laughter echoed, harsh and mocking. "You think they'll follow you? You're nothing without your precious crowd." He gestured dismissively, and onlookers began to scatter, feet pounding against stone. The morning's promise of unity shattered. A knot twisted in Aelira's chest. She had dared to challenge the status quo, and found herself standing alone. She clenched her fists, the coarse fibers of her practical clothing biting into her skin, a reminder of her place. In this world, her voice cracked as she whispered a silent prayer to Tharan, seeking guidance, even as her heart began to sink. As the last of the crowd vanished, Aelira stood in the empty plaza, her resolve crumbling like the ancient stone of the canyon. The sun continued its ascent, indifferent to her plight, illuminating the shadows where she had hoped to forge a new path. She glanced at the enforcers, their smug expressions a stark contrast to the warmth of the morning. A cool breeze brushed against her cheek. Dusk settled over Reconciliation Plaza, casting long shadows that danced like specters among the increasingly anxious crowd. Aelira felt the pressure of the moment, heavy as a stone. Only 3 days remained before the community would be forced into a debt they could never repay, and the enforcers loomed like vultures, their glares sharp enough to cut through the gathering twilight. She needed to rally the few brave souls who still dared to stand against the oppression, igniting a spark of courage in those paralyzed by fear. If she failed, the island's spirit would flicker out, leaving her to witness the ruin of everything she cherished. Aelira stepped forward, her voice trembling yet resolute. "We must not allow their shadows to loom over us any longer. The wrongs we have endured echo through our souls, and it is time to unite our spirits." Her words were fragile glass against the storm of despair. The crowd shifted, eyes darting to the enforcers who leaned against their shields, arms crossed and smirks plastered across their faces. Tension thickened the air, and the weight of desperation loomed large. Behind her the sun dipped lower, each second echoing in her mind. Every moment lost drew them closer to their fate. One enforcer stepped forward, a menacing figure clad in black, and loomed over her. "You think your words can save you?" His breath was hot, tainted with disdain. Blood pounded in her ears, rooted in place by the fear of confrontation. The enforcer's presence felt like an iron chain, constricting her resolve. "Do you really think anyone cares what you have to say?" The crowd flinched, hope dissipating like smoke, leaving Aelira to bear the suffocating silence. "We must rise as one against the tide of oppression," she shouted, desperation spilling from her lips as she scanned the faces of the bystanders. But as she called for unity, the enforcers escalated their intimidation, flanking her, laughter ringing in her ears like a death knell. Aelira glanced around at the fearful faces, each mirroring her internal struggle. Time was running out. If they didn't act soon, the consequences would be irreversible. She took a step closer, determined to reach the hearts of the people, but they recoiled as the enforcer raised his hand, a threat hanging heavy in the air.
Step back, or you'll regret it. Aelira's shoulders slumped as the clock ticked on, losing them one by one. With every breath, Aelira felt the walls closing in, the enforcer's shadows stretching longer, eclipsing her resolve. Just as she opened her mouth to speak again, a sudden shout erupted from the crowd, a voice she recognized. Aelira, they're coming for us. Dread coiled in her gut as she turned.
Dusk settled over Reconciliation Plaza, casting long shadows that danced beneath the flickering glow of lanterns. The air brimmed with the rich scent of herbed cactus stew simmering in a nearby vendor's pot, mingling with the sweetness of sun-dried fish sizzling on a grill. Families huddled together, sharing ornate grain bread and wild berries, their quiet laughter a fragile reminder of community, as they exchanged glances filled with uncertainty. Aelira stood at the edge of the gathering, her pulse quickening in rhythm with the distant drums of the festival, where hope and fear intertwined in the twilight sky, and the time for action felt perilously close. The towering obelisk at the center of the plaza loomed as a symbol of unity, yet the colorful banners fluttered overhead like whispers of dissent, echoing the unrest that simmered beneath the surface. Aelira stepped forward, her hands trembling as she clasped an old canyon stone in her pocket, a superstitious charm believed to ward off the restless spirits of the vanished people. She took a breath, feeling the importance of her words surge within her. "Together we weave our strength like threads in the tapestry of night," she called, her voice echoing against the towering stone walls. The crowd shifted uneasily, eyes darting toward the shadows where the enforcers lurked, their presence like a storm brewing on the horizon. She met the gaze of an elder among them, his lined face revealing the stories of hardship and resilience, and she bowed slightly, acknowledging his status before continuing. "If we remain silent, the whispers of fear will swallow our home in shadows." As she spoke, a vendor served her a plate of canyon root vegetables, their earthy aroma filling her senses and grounding her amidst the rising tension. She accepted the meal with a nod, grateful for the sustenance, though unease hung thick in the air. Murmurs rippled through the gathered people, but many turned their eyes away, unwilling to confront the danger that loomed ever closer. Aelira clenched her fists, determination igniting as she caught sight of a young boy hesitating to take a piece of bread from his father, the fear of the enforcers choking their spirit like the dust from the canyon winds. Just then the enforcers emerged from the shadows, wielding weapons that glinted ominously in the fading light. A stifling silence enveloped Reconciliation Plaza as they advanced, their intentions clear. "Anyone who stands against the law will face consequences," one of them shouted, his voice a harsh whip against the fragile atmosphere. Aelira's heart raced as she watched families shrink back, the sense of community fraying like the edges of worn fabric, the air thickened with unspoken prayers for. Dusk settled over Reconciliation Plaza like a heavy shroud, the vibrant colors of the day fading into ominous shadows. Aelira Althara pressed against the cold stone wall, her pulse quickening as distant shouts clawed at her mind. She had witnessed the enforcers' brutality, their threats lingering like smoke in the air, and now fear wrapped around her like a vice. Time slipped away, the week dwindling to its final hours. "If I don't act soon, my community won't get the justice they deserve. It'll slip away like sand through my fingers." 3 days left, 3 days to find the courage to protect those who depended on her. The stakes had never felt higher. Aelira's breaths came shallow and quick, each inhalation trembling through her chest. The plaza, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a trap. She clenched her fists, the rough stone digging into her palm. What could she do? The enforcers were a force of nature, an unstoppable tide that threatened to drown her and everyone she loved. How could she stand against them? The shadows felt like they were closing in, filling my mind with doubt and fear. She had always believed in the strength of her community, but now, as fear twisted her insides, the certainty crumbled. What if her efforts failed? What if she let them down? With every shout echoing from the square, Aelira's anxiety tightened like a noose. The thought of her community suffering while she cowered in a corner filled her with dread. "I can't let them down," she whispered to the encroaching darkness, but the words felt hollow. Her mind raced, imagining the consequences of inaction. What if the enforcers came for her next? What if she was the reason for their misery?
Each second felt like a countdown, a reminder that the clock was ticking. The enforcers wouldn't wait for her to find her courage. They would act, and by then it would be too late. By the end of the week, everything could change, and she might be left with a debt she couldn't pay, one that could devastate her community. A gust of wind rushed in, bringing the shouts closer, making my heart race with fear and urgency. Aelira's heart thudded in her chest as she faced the reality. Waiting was a luxury she didn't have. She had to make a choice, but what choice could possibly lead to salvation? She could rally the others, but would that just put them in the crosshairs of the enforcers? Or should she flee, find safety, and leave them to their fate? The thought sent a cold shiver down her spine. Each option felt like a betrayal, and the winds of chaos grew louder, threatening to drown out her resolve. Aelira pressed her back against the wall, her heart.
Dusk draped Reconciliation Plaza in shadows, the sun's last rays glinting off the worn stone pathways. Aelira stood at the edge of the square, the scent of sun-dried fish mingling with earthy herbed cactus stew wafting from a nearby vendor. The plaza buzzed with the muted chatter of families gathering for their communal meals, hands passing around ornate grain bread, wild berries and honeycombs, their laughter a stark contrast to the tension coiling in Aelira's stomach. She tugged at the frayed hem of her woven cloak, a dull shade of brown, and took a cautious step forward as she spotted the enforcers looming over a group of community members. Words of prayer hung unspoken on her lips, a silent plea to Aelira, the guardian of balance, for strength in the face of danger. The enforcers, a trio of imposing figures clad in dark armor, cast long shadows across the cobbled ground, their weapons glinting ominously in the fading light. Aelira's breath caught as she recognized the gleam of the blade in one enforcer's hand, a stark reminder of the power imbalance that defined their world. The murmurs of the crowd grew anxious, eyes darting between the enforcers and the cornered families, each whisper laced with fear. Aelira's fingers brushed against the shard of canyon stone she kept tied around her neck, its weight grounding her in an unsettling moment. She had heard the old women in the market speak of the shadows at dusk revealing truths. Perhaps they were right, and the spirits of the vanished people were watching, waiting for someone to act. A movement caught her attention, a mother clutching her child, the boy's eyes wide with fear. Aelira's fists clenched, anger burning in her chest, desperation pushing her forward. She stepped closer, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Release them! They are innocent, not deserving of this fate." The enforcers turned, amusement flickering across their faces, but one took a step closer, brandishing his weapon with calculated menace. The weight of the crowd's hopeful yet fearful gazes pressed on her. She hesitated, the words of a prayer bubbling up, but in that charged moment, she couldn't find the strength to speak. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, remembering the stories of her ancestors who had fought for justice, who had risked everything for their people. There was no turning back now. She had to face the shadow of intimidation and stand firm, even if it meant risking her own safety. As the first stars pierced the twilight sky, Aelira felt the canyon's winds swirl around her, almost echoing the whispers of those who had come before. The plaza held its breath, the tension palpable, and in that moment of stillness, she realized the truth she had sensed all along. The enforcers thrived on fear, but so did the strength of her community. Chapter 6. Whispers of Renewal. The archive of Stone Canyon exuded a solemn weight, each dusty tome a testament to the struggles of those who had come before. Aelira Althara stepped inside, the earthy scent of stone mingling with the faint rustle of leaves from the rooftop gardens above. Sunlight streamed through large glass panes, casting a warm glow across the cool stone walls. Memories of her distant home stirred within her, where the air was tinged with salt and sorrow. Here the air felt precious, filled with untold stories waiting to be uncovered. Aelira pressed on deeper into the archive, urgency thrumming in her veins, a need to find the ancient artifact that could unite the community against the encroaching darkness. Aelira ran her fingers along the spines of the faded books lining the shelves, pausing to trace the intricate carvings on the wooden cabinets. Each touch sent a jolt of warmth through her, reminding her of the connections she had forged with the islanders. A faint hum escaped her lips, a melody woven from her hopes and fears. The scent of warm bread from her childhood home contrasted sharply with the bitterness that filled her after leaving. The memories, like the books, were burdens she could not shake yet could not ignore. Shaking her head, she pressed on, determined not to be distracted by the ache that lingered.
The soft thud of her footsteps echoed in the chamber as she delved deeper. Dust motes danced in the beams of sunlight, glinting like stars in the dimness. Aelira pushed through the familiar pull of solitude wrapping around her. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on an unmarked door at the far end. A surge of curiosity propelled her forward. She grasped the handle, hesitating just a moment. What if it was empty? What if it held nothing of worth? Yet the weight of her purpose anchored her. She would not falter now. The door creaked open, revealing a hidden chamber bathed in an ethereal glow. There it sat, a pedestal supporting an ancient artifact, its surface etched with symbols of past reconciliations. Aelira's breath caught. This was it. She stepped inside, fingers brushing against the cool surface as she leaned closer, drawn to the intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with life. It was as if the artifact was whispering to her, an echo of her own long-buried aspirations. Memories of her home flooded back, of her attempts to mend the fractures within her fractured family. The weight of her past settled heavily on her shoulders, but she straightened, determination igniting within her. As she turned to leave, urgency surged through her. The artifact could be the key to uniting the islanders against the impending threat of exploitation. Aelira's thoughts danced with visions of families standing together, their unity a vibrant tapestry woven from shared struggles. Doubt clawed at her insides.
The archive of Stone Canyon rose majestically from the rugged cliffs, its weathered stone facade illuminated by the golden light of morning. Intricate carvings adorned the double doors, each one a testament to reconciliation and unity. Aelira inhaled deeply, the earthy aroma of ancient stone mingling with the fresh scent of dew-kissed leaves cascading from the rooftop gardens. Sunlight streamed through expansive glass windows, casting warm patches on the cool stone walls, beckoning her deeper into the heart of the archive. With each step, her fingers traced the textured carvings, feeling the stories embedded within, while the distant rustle of leaves filled the air, promising renewal. Today, hope radiated from her, as palpable as the sun warming her skin, urging her forward. As Aelira settled at a weathered wooden table, her fingers brushed the faded parchment of ancient texts before her. The delicate scent of aged paper mingled with the stone's earthy musk, anchoring her in the moment. She leaned closer, sunlight illuminating the intricate symbols, their meanings swirling in her mind like the gentle air flowing through the open windows. Outside, the canyon echoed with distant birdsong, a reminder of vibrant life beyond these walls, yet urgency surged through her, propelling her forward. The artifact held wisdom that could unite her community against the looming threat of exploitation, and she could almost taste the promise of change on her tongue, sweet and invigorating, like the first sip of morning tea. Just as she began to decipher the first line, the heavy double doors swung open with a creak, shattering the tranquil atmosphere. A group of skeptics burst in, their voices sharp and invasive, questioning the very essence of what she sought to uncover. "This artifact is a relic, Aelira," one scoffed, disdain dripping from his tone. "What wisdom can it offer us now?" Their footsteps echoed ominously in the atrium, reverberating against the stone walls and drowning out the gentle rustling of leaves. Aelira's spirit plummeted as the sunlight dimmed, leaving her feeling cold and isolated. "You fail to grasp the significance," she countered, her voice rising to meet the challenge as she stood, determination igniting within her. "This artifact transcends mere stone and ink. It embodies the essence of our history and the profound wisdom of our ancestors who confronted far graver threats." The air thickened with tension, the smell of old parchment now overpowering. As their skeptical gazes bore into her, she felt her resolve weaken, thoughts of doubt gnawing at her confidence. The sun that had once been a beacon of hope now cast shadows that loomed over her, like the very doubts she fought against, making her question if she could truly unite her. The archive of Stone Canyon loomed before Aelira, its ancient stones whispering secrets of the past. Midday sun spilled through the narrow openings, casting sharp shadows that danced on the floor like restless spirits. Aelira stepped forward, the weight of her community's hopes pushing against her chest. Justice for her people, justice that could be found in the artifact she clutched, depended on her ability to unite the skeptics. With only 5 days left to rally support, the clock was ticking. If she failed today, the debt of inaction would crush them all, leaving scars deeper than the ones they already bore. Her heart hammered as she faced the group, the enormity of her task pressing against her. "This artifact isn't just a relic, it's a guide," Aelira urged, her voice trembling with urgency.
It holds the strategies we need to reclaim our island from those who wish to exploit it. We can forge a new path, one that honors our ancestors and supports our future. But I need your belief. I need you to stand with me." A murmur rippled through the crowd, skepticism etched on every face. A tall man in the back, arms crossed defiantly, scoffed. "And what makes you think this old stone can change anything? It's just a piece of history, Aelira. We can't build a future on dust. You expect us to believe in fairy tales?" His words sliced through her like ice, freezing the hope that had been kindling in the room. "We don't have time for this." Aelira's voice escalated, desperation flooding her. "If we don't act now, the exploiters will come, and we'll be left with nothing but our regrets. The week is almost over, and if we don't unite, our chance for justice will slip away. We could be doomed to repeat the past." Yet, the more she pleaded, the more the skeptics huddled together, whispering their doubts, feeding each other's fears. The walls of the archive seemed to close in, echoing their resistance. Frustration clawed at Aelira as she gazed at their dismissive faces. The weight of her community's history pressed down on her. "This isn't just about the artifact, it's about our survival," she insisted, her voice breaking, a storm of emotion threatening to spill over. But the skepticism only deepened, their resolve hardening as they turned away, leaving her standing alone amid the shadows of the archive. Silence enveloped Aelira, a heavy stone lodged in her throat. They were turning their backs, leaving her alone with her desperation. If she couldn't convince them, if she couldn't bridge the chasm of doubt, everything would be lost. Impending doom suffocated her, pressing against her chest. Her hands shook as she implored the crowd, searching for a way forward, but time was slipping through her fingers like sand, and with it, the very future of her community. A single thought raced through her mind.
Reconciliation Plaza buzzed with energy, a vast, circular space carved from the canyon's stone walls. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a palpable blend of hopeful anticipation and underlying unrest. Colorful banners fluttered above, each representing the diverse factions of the community, while the towering weathered obelisk at the center stood as a silent testament to unity. Aelira Althara stood at the edge of the plaza, her palms pressed against the cool stone of the podium. The crowd shifted uneasily, shoulders tense and faces averted, their expectant gazes pressed against her, each one a reminder of the hope she had to uphold. Time seemed to slip away as she prepared to speak, aware that one misstep could shatter their trust and their future. No more hesitation. She was ready to share her truth. Aelira inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her bones. "I stand before you as a member of this community, someone who has known heartache and struggle, just like each of you. I know the feeling of being abandoned, of wondering if hope is a mere mirage. But I also know what it means to fight fiercely for what we cherish, to rise when the world urges us to remain silent." Her voice rang out, clear and unwavering, searching for resonance in the hearts of those before her. Would they listen? Would they let her words sink in? A murmur rippled through the crowd, a few faces softening while others remained set in stubborn lines. Aelira pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the rapid thump beneath her fingertips. She pressed on, her voice rising above the din. "I sacrificed everything for this community. The joyful moments of my childhood, the aspirations I once nurtured. I stood alone in the dark, grasping the threads of our history, hoping they would weave a tapestry of unity. But I cannot do this alone. I need your strength, your belief. Together we can forge the path ahead, reclaiming what is rightfully ours." She searched the crowd, desperate for signs of connection, but the hardness in some eyes remained unyielding. Eyes darted away, and a few people exchanged glances, their brows furrowed, doubt still clinging to them. Aelira gestured towards the ancient artifact resting behind her, a symbol of their shared history. "Behold this, a testament to our shared identity and the wisdom that unites us. It holds the stories of our ancestors, their struggles and triumphs. We cannot let skepticism tear us apart. We must embrace the lessons of the past to forge our path forward. If we unite, if we believe, we can turn the tide, we can shape our destiny together." Her voice cracked with raw emotion, a plea echoing through the plaza, but the crowd still felt distant, caught in their doubt. Aelira lingered on the final word, letting it resonate in the air. Aelira stood at the center of Reconciliation Plaza, the sun rising with fierce urgency, illuminating her determined face. Today was the day they would unite against exploitation, and the weight of strategies from the ancient artifact pressed heavily on her mind. Around her, the plaza buzzed with energy,
Colorful banners fluttered overhead, each representing different factions of the community, while the towering obelisk at the center loomed as a testament to their shared history. The air was thick with a mix of hopeful anticipation and underlying unrest. "We have until the end of the week to take action," she called out, her voice echoing against the stone walls. The crowd murmured, their expressions a blend of hope and skepticism. With every passing second, the urgency of their situation sank deeper into her bones. Failure was not an option. They could not let fear dictate their future. "But what if it doesn't work, Aelira?" A gruff voice rang out from the crowd, slicing through her momentum. A man stepped forward, his brow furrowed with doubt. "We've tried before. Promises of change, dreams of unity. Every time, we end up worse off." Each word hit her like a stone dropping into a pond, rippling through her confidence. Aelira's pulse quickened, a rapid thrum in her chest. The seconds were slipping away, each one a reminder of their dwindling time. She needed them to believe, to act before the week slipped away. Yet a tension hung in the air, palpable and stifling. The crowd's uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud, ready to burst. "What about our families?" Another voice, a woman this time, pierced through the din. "They're relying on us, Aelira, and all we have are more empty promises." The murmurs grew louder, doubts fanning the flames of division. A wave of nausea surged through her, and she could sense the weight of their history, the scars of past failures pressing down upon her. The strategies were sound, she believed in them, yet with each skeptical question, the ground felt like it was shifting beneath her feet. Could she convince them before it was too late? "We can't afford to take on more debt," a voice shouted from the back, anger lacing each syllable. "We've lost too much already." Her stomach churned as each dissenting voice carved away at her confidence, turning her hope into despair. Time was not on her side. If they didn't unite now, the consequences would be permanent. She looked at the sky, the sun already too high, too hot. "We must act," she implored, desperation creeping into her tone. "If we don't seize this moment, we risk losing everything." The crowd was restless, and hope felt as fleeting as a gust of wind. Aelira's breath hit.
Chapter 7. The Dawn of Purpose. Aelira stood on the makeshift podium in Reconciliation Plaza, the morning air crisp and sharp around her. The vast circular space was alive with a sea of faces, some hopeful, others etched with skepticism. Vibrant banners fluttered above, each representing different factions of the community, while the towering obelisk at the center loomed as a silent witness to the historic reconciliation that had taken place here. Aelira inhaled deeply, the weight of the moment pressing upon her. The clock ticked loudly, each second a reminder of the stakes, justice for the island and unity for the community. With a voice soft yet resonant, she implored, "I implore you, if we do not unite, we shall be engulfed by our own trepidations." Silence enveloped her plea, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. She steadied herself, scanning the crowd for signs of understanding. Anxiety crept in as she noted a woman with arms crossed, frowning, her lips pressed into a thin line. Aelira's pulse quickened as she searched the crowd for a connection. "Hearken! The alien did not merely sacrifice itself, it bestowed upon us a vision of our potential transformation." Her voice rose, threading through the murmurs like a beacon. Yet the woman shook her head defiantly, arms still tightly crossed. Aelira pressed on, her words a sharp blade cutting through the fog of fear. "We've lived in isolation for too long. This breakthrough, it's not just science, it's our chance to redefine who we are." The crowd shifted, whispers growing louder. A few heads nodded, but the frowning woman remained unmoved. Aelira clenched her fists, anxiety creeping in. What if this was all for nothing? What if they turned away from the back of the crowd? A voice broke through the din. "But what if it's a trap? We don't know their intentions." The skepticism rippled through the crowd like a stone thrown into a still pond. Aelira inhaled sharply, her thoughts racing. What if it is? But what if it isn't? What if this is our chance to move forward together? The crowd buzzed with a mix of hope and fear, some nodding, others scowling. Aelira's resolve strengthened. She would not falter in the face of doubt. With renewed determination, Aelira planted her feet firmly on the podium, the weight of their gazes grounding her. The atmosphere was electric, charged with both fear and possibility. She caught sight of the woman in the crowd,
her arms slowly uncrossing, uncertainty flickering like a candle's flame. Together we can forge a new path, one where fear does not dictate our choices. The alien sacrifice is a gift. Let it be our guide.
Morning light spilled into Reconciliation Plaza, illuminating the intricate carvings on the towering obelisk at its center, each relief a testament to the community's hard-won unity. Colorful banners fluttered overhead like vibrant flags of hope, yet tension crackled in the air, whispers of dissent weaving through the crowd. The cool stone beneath Aelira's feet contrasted sharply with the sun's warming embrace, and the scent of spiced food from nearby vendors mingled with the faint dust of the canyon, creating an intoxicating blend that filled her lungs. The echo of voices bounced off the canyon walls, amplifying the collective anxiety and anticipation that hung thick in the air, as if the very stones were holding their breath in expectation. Aelira stepped forward, heart thudding, each beat a reminder of the stakes at hand. She raised her hands, palms open, and called out, "Behold the obelisk!" The crowd swayed, a tapestry of faces reflecting hope and fear. Sunlight glinted off the vivid tiles of surrounding rooftops, casting dancing reflections onto the plaza floor, while murmurs rose like a tide, threatening to drown her words. This sacred ground of reconciliation beckons us here. We have woven change from our past into a tapestry of strength. Shall we not weave anew? Her voice rang out, sharp and clear, but the echo of doubt rippled back, a harsh reminder of the opposition lurking in the shadows. A low rumble of dissent began to rise, voices growing louder, fueled by fear, each shout a stone cast at her resolve. Aelira's stomach churned as she caught sight of familiar faces contorted with resentment. They clutched their banners tightly, the fabric flapping wildly in the breeze, as if they were shields against the very change she was advocating. The sacrifice of the alien was not merely a gift, but a specter of threat that looms over us. Someone yelled, and the crowd echoed the sentiment, a chorus of fear that swallowed her words whole. Aelira's breath quickened. The warmth of the sun now prickled against her skin, her resolve teetering on the edge of despair. At the moment she sensed a flicker of connection with the crowd. A figure stepped forward, a respected community leader whose voice had once guided her own. He raised his hand, silencing the gathering with a wave that felt more like a blade. Aelira speaks of unity, but what has unity brought us? More loss, more sacrifice. His words sliced through the air, and Aelira felt the crowd inhale collectively, an atmosphere thick with betrayal. Shadows lengthened as the sun climbed higher. She could almost taste the bitterness mingled with the spices of nearby food. The banners above fluttered ominously, each one a testament to the divisions that threatened their unity. Desperation clawed at Aelira's throat. Dusk settled over Reconciliation Plaza, casting an amber glow over the weathered stone structures and the towering obelisk at the center, a symbol of unity. Aelira stood at the heart of this gathering, her palms clammy against the coarse fabric of her layered tunic. The air thickened with the aroma of sun-dried fish and herbed cactus stew simmering in nearby stalls, where vendors exchanged quick words with laborers emerging from the canyon depths. Families congregated for their evening meals, sharing ornate grain bread and canyon root vegetables, their ritual of gratitude echoing through the plaza. Yet the crowd before her remained restless, a mix of hardened faces and curious eyes eager for the truths she dared to speak. Their murmurs entwined with the laughter of children, darting between stalls, their hands sticky with honeycomb and wild berries, creating a tapestry of life in the plaza. Aelira took a steadying breath, her voice clear as she began recounting her journey. "I stand before you, not as a challenger of your ways, but as the voice of our lineage, one who has wandered through the mist of our past. We must embrace the truth, lest the spirits of our ancestors stir in discontent. Remember the tales of Aelira, the guardian of balance. She guides us even now in this time of reckoning." Her words flowed like honey drizzled over warm bread, sweet yet heavy with meaning. The crowd began to nod in agreement, their expressions softening as they leaned forward, captivated by her fervor. Nearby, a group of market traders clad in practical earth-toned clothes hushed their banter, their attention wavering between Aelira's impassioned speech and the bowl of herbed cactus stew they shared. An elder, a stooped figure wrapped in richly embroidered garments that shimmered with the colors of the canyon, stepped forward, raising a trembling hand, palm outward, a gesture of respect. "Aelira, you speak of balance,
Yet we have thrived on the traditions passed down to us. The whispers of Tharan urge us to remember our roots, but perhaps there is room for both the old ways and this new understanding. Let us unite our voices for the sake of our children." His declaration resonated with their shared history, and Aelira's brow furrowed, the weight of the future pressing on her as she sensed a shift in the crowd, the tension loosening like the twists of a vine in the canyon's embrace. As the elder's words settled, Aelira's hands trembled slightly, the energy in the air palpable. "Together we shall weave new destinies as the river carves its path through stone, savoring the essence of our shared feasts." A child nearby, cheeks smeared with wild berries, laughed, and Aelira smiled despite
The cool stone of Reconciliation Plaza pressed against Aelira's bare feet, grounding her as dusk painted the sky in hues of deep lavender and burnt orange. Above, colorful banners rippled in the gentle breeze, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the darkening stone walls of the canyon that cradled this sacred space. The faint aroma of spiced food wafted from nearby vendors, mingling with the earthy scent of the canyon, invoking memories of shared meals and laughter. Voices swelled and fell like a tide, amplifying the tension that hung in the air. With each heartbeat she felt the moment drawing near, the time to confront the crowd and reveal the truth. Aelira stepped forward, her heart thudded in her chest, each beat a reminder of her determination. The towering obelisk loomed behind her, its weathered surface etched with stories of a reconciled past, a stark reminder of their potential. Shadows danced across the intricate carvings as the sun dipped lower. With a deep breath, she raised her arms, the fabric of her simple dress billowed in the cool evening air, capturing the crowd's attention like a moth to flame. "We find ourselves at a pivotal juncture, esteemed friends," she called, her voice rising above the cacophony. "It's time to unite for the future we can build together." The murmurs quieted, but uncertainty crackled in the air. Aelira pressed on, the scents of spiced food now mingling with the tang of sweat and unease that filled the plaza. "I have sacrificed everything, and what I ask of you is to look beyond the fear of the unknown." Her words wove through the crowd, drawing their attention and prompting them to lean in. The colorful banners fluttered above, each representing a different faction, a visual reminder of their divisions. Yet, as she spoke, she envisioned them merging into a singular tapestry of hope. Aelira's breath quickened as she scanned the faces before her, some hardened with doubt, others softening with curiosity. The aliens who come to us bring not just technology, but a chance to honor our traditions while embracing progress. The sound of her heartbeat thudded in her ears, urging her to continue. United in purpose, we can intertwine our rich heritage with a future that honors our collective spirit. She could see the flicker of recognition in their eyes, a glimmer of understanding blooming amidst the tension. The silence that followed was thick, almost tangible, as the crowd absorbed her words. A warm wave of hope flooded her, invigorating her spirit. The soft rustle of fabric and shuffling feet filled the space, transforming skepticism into something profound. "Let us vow, right here and now, to restore our values together," Aelira cried, her voice a clarion call in the dusk, and she felt the energy shift. Dusk draped Reconciliation Plaza in a tapestry of golden hues, the last light of day flickering like hope itself. Aelira Althara stood at the center, her heart raced as the weight of the community's future pressed down on her like the thickening evening air. With less than a week to solidify their commitment to a new beginning, she faced a powerful symbolic act that could restore their values and embrace the scientific breakthrough threatening to rip them apart. "Tonight we shall weave a living tapestry of hope and unity, a tree that will breathe life into our future," she declared, her voice strong yet trembling with urgency. "This act will symbolize our unity, tradition and progress intertwined. We cannot afford to let this moment slip away. We must choose our future together." The crowd stirred restlessly, a low murmur of skepticism rippling through the gathering. Aelira's gaze flicked to the back where a faction led by Kellen, a once respected elder who had denounced her publicly, loomed like a storm cloud. "You think planting a mere tree will shield us from the storm brewing? It's madness," Kellen shouted, his voice cutting through the air. Aelira's chest tightened as panic surged within her. Time slipped away. The week loomed over her, like a guillotine, the consequences of failure unforgiving. If they couldn't unite, the community would face a debt they could never repay. People began to shift uncomfortably, eyes scanning the crowd as doubt crept in. No, not now, not when hope flickered just within reach. Aelira stepped forward,
her breath quickening as she fought to regain control. The tree represents our resilience. It is not just a plant, it's a commitment to our future. Her voice rose above the growing dissent, desperation lending it strength. Kellen sneered, his followers nodding in agreement, their faces hard with defiance. We have 3 days until the decision is made for us. If we don't act, we risk losing everything. She locked eyes with a few of the opposing faction, their expressions wavering between anger and contemplation. Could she sway them? A palpable tension hung between Aelira and Kellen, the crowd caught in the crossfire. The air crackled with uncertainty, but Aelira pressed on. Join me. If we plant this tree together, we stand united against the coming storm. A moment of silence, then one by one, some stepped forward, hesitant but curious. Hope surged within her as she witnessed the shift. Yet Kellen's voice boomed again, filled with venom. You'll regret this. He turned to his followers, rallying them with a fierce determination that sent a shiver down her spine. The division was deep, and time was short. Aelira's pulse raced. Could she really bring them together before the week ended? Just as she thought she might break through, chaos erupted. A member of Kellen's faction, eyes wild with rage, shoved a nearby